So guys, today we're at the Mall of Millenia in Orlando, Florida. I've been contracted by a private company. We're going to be capturing their headshots. You're going to be seeing me set up for this headshot session. All right guys, so let's dive into the setup. First, we're gonna start off with the flashpoint drop stand. This thing is amazing. It picks up, it falls down easily and quickly, and that's super important when it comes to setting up at any photo shoot. Now we're gonna use the flashpoint arc light. This is a reflector I use to fill in the shadows in the neck area and some of the face, along with giving a nice set of catch lights in the eyes. It's a key component to my whole headshot lighting setup, and I hate to go without it. We're gonna be setting up the flashpoint C stand, which is gonna be holding up our light. And this right here is the 8600 extension flash head. This gets attached to the flashpoint 8600. Using the flashpoint super clamp, we're going to attach the 8600 unit to the C stand to weigh it down, so that way the whole light stand is not wobbling all over the place. And so that way the top section of everything where the light is going to be attached is not top heavy. That's the only reason, and probably the only piece of equipment you're going to see that I use that contains wires. I love a whole wireless setup. So now we're going to introduce the Glow 48-inch softbox. I've attached it to the light, the 8600 flash head. The reason why I like the 48-inch softbox is because it gives a great spread of light on both side profiles of the subject, both left and right. For the purpose of this headshot session, I'm going to place my softbox right above the subject and the reflector, more towards the reflector so it's feathered, and facing directly down, and adjusting it so that way it's hitting majority of the reflector, but also feathering the front of the face of the subject. You're going to get a subtle light on your subject. It's not going to be harsh, bright, or overpowering. It's going to reflect down to the reflector, fill in the shadows, and also fill in part of the subject's face. It's going to give an even lighting on the right side and the left side of the subject. And with its size, it helps me light my subject without having to use two lights. This is why this is a crucial component to my one light headshot setup. Now, another reason why I have the modifier set this way is because my backdrop is white. I'm looking for more of a light gray or mid gray, and I can do that by angling my light. So remember earlier when I mentioned that I don't want my C-stand to be top heavy, or that I wanted to weigh it down? I always perform this quick test whenever I'm setting up my light at any session. Just wiggle it a little bit to make sure that it's not going to fall over. You don't want an accident. You don't want your light stand, your light or modifier falling on your subject. That's not going to be a good day for you. All right, so let's move forward and let's set up the backdrop. I'm going to be using another C-stand. It's just a big 5x6 backdrop, so it has a hook on the top, which you will see here once I open it up. Make sure you do this around somewhere that there's a lot of space, because it is quite big and you don't want to knock anything over. So what I'm going to do is clamp the hook or just the top of the backdrop to my C-stand and just raise it up where it's tall enough and short enough for the subject. So now it's time to set up the camera and the light settings. As you see on the screen here, you have the Condition 1 case, number 300. And inside of my case, I have my Sony a7R5 and a 90mm, which is what I use for all of my headshot sessions. I always recommend either a 105, an 85mm, or even a 90mm for beauty or headshots. This is the Flashpoint R2 transmitter. This is going to be triggering our lights. We're just getting the camera set up with the memory card. And then we have our tablet, or we show them what everything looks like so that way they have a better feeling about the headshot. This part is super important. A lot of people like to take people's photographs and never show them what they have in the camera. I think you're setting yourself up for failure in the end, because when you go to proof that work to that client and they're not happy with their pictures, then you got to go back to the drawing board and start that shoot over. If you're working this headshot session and you're showing your client what their headshot looks like, you get to figure out their flaws or what they're self-conscious about or what they don't like about themselves. That way you guys can work together in capturing the perfect headshot. Since I set up my camera, I set up my lighting, and we're ready to go, I'm going to take a few example photos and I'm going to show them to the client to make sure that we're on the same page. They understand how I'm going to do the headshot session and the different poses I'm going to go for.
This reflector. All right. So we're going to do 3 profile shots. We're going to start off with a center shot, just like this.
Okay.
Then we're going to turn to the side, and then we're going to turn to the other side. The reason we do that is because everybody's different. Some people like their left side rather than their right.
And what I'm doing here in the video is explaining to the subject exactly what the posing will be. We always go with a center shot, a left profile, and a right profile. Why? Because people usually have a side they prefer. So we need to figure that out, especially since we don't know the subject personally. So we get both sides. That way they have options to work with, and we can figure out which side they like the best, which is going to photograph the best. During your session, you have to look out for things that stand out or are going to be hard to Photoshop or edit out later, or even just little things such as buttons, pins, or things that just shouldn't be in the picture. This subject stepped into my headshot area. I proceeded to tell him that he needed to button up the first button on his jacket. That way it can create a symmetrical V-line for the headshot. I'm instructing the subject to turn to his side, and I usually mention things like, hey, bring your right shoulder towards me a little bit more, or bring your left shoulder towards me a little bit more. Say things like, follow my hand with your face, and just move it left to right, and you'll see that they easily follow your hand, and it'll place them right where you need them to be.
And then what we're going to do now is the same thing, but take your hair, put it right behind you. So you can show off your earrings, you can show off the belly.
All right, now let's work on posing women for headshots and things that you should look out for. So when working with women, you have to remember that we have to pose them quite differently. Most women have longer hair. So with that being said, I have these 3 examples that you see on screen. We have Georgia here with a center shot. It's a little bit more of a beauty portrait, not a headshot, but I just want to go with the technical details. Then we have this client here, and we have my other client here as well. She has longer hair, she has shorter hair. When we're posing them and we start off with a center shot, we give them 2 options. One with the hair in front, try to be as symmetrical as you can, and one with the hair behind the subject. So you just ask them kindly, hey, can you please place your hair behind you? And just help them with any adjustments that you have to make. Whenever it comes to these side profile shots, the side that is facing you, for example, the left shoulder, then that hair should go behind the subject. And then on the opposite shoulder, the hair should be forward in front of the subject. And as you can see here for this headshot, it's the same thing. However, she has shorter hair, so it doesn't apply. This creates a very subtle image, and it's just a formality. Alright guys, so I hope you learned a lot from this video in terms of setting up, lighting, and interacting with the subject or your client for headshots. Take a look at the next video in the comments below where you will see the link to watch how I edit the headshots captured in this session today. Thanks for watching.